You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 401, when the most productive thing you can do is step away. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. Before we dive in, I just want to say thank you so much. I heard from so many of you in my Instagram DMs, text messages from friends and clients. I got gifts, I got flowers, really, I did want to celebrate 400, but you guys made it so special. Thank you so much for the feedback and telling me how much you enjoyed the behind the scenes. And speaking of behind the scenes and the support that you gave me from last week's episode, today I'm going to be sharing another behind the scenes story of why this episode is dropping a couple days late. And why sometimes the most productive decision you can make is the one that feels completely wrong in the moment. If you've ever struggled with giving yourself permission to step away when you're compromised, this episode is for you. And now, let's get to the straight talk. You know, I have always prided myself on hitting deadlines. And in 400 episodes of this podcast, there have been many times that myself and my team have bent over backwards to get episodes out to you every Monday morning. Now, we have not been perfect in 400 episodes by any means, but we really, really tried to hit that deadline. And sometimes life just has other plans. And sometimes the most productive thing you can do might be the hard decision to step away, even when it feels like the wrong thing to do. Now, I'm going to share with you my own example and experience of what is happening right now, as in this weekend, the last week, this week. But I want you to listen through the lens of there are definitely times in your business where it is absolutely the most productive thing to do is to step away, but it is such a hard decision and it often feels wrong. It feels wrong because of our internal chatter of guilt, of obligation, of what we should do, of how other people see us or how we want other people to see us. And so I just want you to listen to what I am going through and going to share with you through that lens of what are those examples when you feel like you should push through at all costs. Because that is exactly what happened to me this past week. And I wanted to share this with you because I think that there is real, true value in giving yourself permission to prioritize what truly matters. The idea that I had for this short episode is, yes, going behind the scenes of why this episode is dropping a few days late. And I needed to reprioritize focusing on writing and recording this episode because of a few things. One, I had just come back from close to a week of being out of the office for a work trip in North Carolina. And when I returned, like we all do when we return back to the office, there was a lot of things that needed my attention. Emails, client situations, I had a discovery call. I had decisions that needed to be made in a timely manner for my upcoming retreat. And while I did get caught up on nearly all of that, the other high value, most productive thing that I had on my schedule was to write and record this episode. Now, just so you have the timeline to be specific so you can follow along, is I flew in on a Monday afternoon back to Vegas. And that day, it was amazing. I got in around 2:00. My son didn't need to be picked up from practice until 5:30. And I came home and I chilled. Like I literally curled up on the couch with my husband because he picked me up at the airport. And I just downshifted because it was a big, full weekend. It was amazing, but it was a full weekend. And I remember in that moment having so much gratitude that I didn't feel like I needed to be pulled to the office or pulled to do my checklist, that I could just rest. And so my husband ended up going and grabbing our son and said, you know what, take a nap. And when we come back, we'll do dinner, have our night, and, that's that. And so that's exactly what I did. I ended up napping for about an hour while he was gone, picking up our son after watching a movie. And we had dinner and it was fine. Like I felt pretty good. And in addition to the list of things that I told you needed to get done with, like the recap, the follow-up, getting back into the business, I also had a very high priority item, which was Tuesday, which brings me to October 28th, my husband's birthday. And we had it on the calendar that we were both ditching work. Yes, even though I had been gone for nearly a week, I had put it on the calendar. I invited him to call out, ditch work, and we were going to make a day of it. So we did an entire date day. Now, mind you, I felt great. I felt really, really good, actually. We dropped our son off. We went and got coffee at our favorite place that's like about 35 minutes away from our house. We don't get to get it very often. We went for a hike. My husband did archery. We then went and had brunch and we did some shopping. And then we came home and we hung out. It was an amazing day. And I felt pretty good. So I get up the next day, it's Wednesday, and Wednesday I did not have any appointments purposely scheduled for this reason. I knew there was a lot of catch up. And top of the priority, as I had said, was recording this podcast episode, first writing it, then recording it, as my deadline for publishing internally for the team for a Monday episode is Wednesday. Ideally, Wednesday means that the audio editor can get it turned around on Thursday, and then Crystal can get it turned around on Friday. Nobody has to rush, and then it's ready to go by Monday. But that's not what was in the plans. I was really not feeling great. I ended up sleeping for 12 hours and took a nap on Wednesday. I was seriously like, what? Why? I feel like I've rested. I came home and I rested and I had this great day with my husband. Why am I so tired? But clearly I was in denial. So I was like, well, I think I can still do it. So I'm going to wake up on Thursday and I'll write and record it. The team can still get it turned around. It's kind of tight, but this is what we're going to do. But I woke up to the reality that I was sick. In fact, what I know is that I had a sinus infection. But that did not stop me. I was like, okay, this is it. This is the deadline. Let's get in the office. So I started writing. And I started writing the content, and I wanted to go in a different direction than what I had planned. I was inspired by a different topic, and I started writing, and I am a mess. Something that should have taken me no more than an hour, I am a couple hours into it, and I am looking at this, and I am like, this is crap. Like, this is crap work. And so I said, I need to rest. I know what I need to do. I have a whole protocol when I get a sinus infection. For those of you that may or may have not heard this in previous episodes, I have a lifelong bad relationship with sinus infections. And it had been almost a year since I had one, which is the longest stretch in my adult life that I had not had a sinus infection. As a side note, since we are going behind the scenes, I've had multiple sinus surgeries. It's a whole thing. And because I hadn't had one in like a year, like I'd really worked on healing the root cause of what was causing my sinus infections, I was in full denial that this was a sinus infection. And I remember being just so frustrated on Thursday, like, oh my gosh, this is going, like, okay, let me just go take a nap. Let me just step away because I have to walk away from this. I am literally spinning my wheels. This is not quality work. What am I going to do? And so I ended up coming back in the office on Friday and I sent an email because I had to ultimately reprioritize rest and health. So I sent a note to my team explaining to them that the episode was not going to be coming to them on Friday. I'd been keeping them updated Wednesday and Thursday, and that I was very, very specific that I would, if I could, I would work on it over the weekend. And if I happened to send it to them, they were absolutely in no means supposed to work on it. I did not want my decision to prioritize health and rest and stepping away to now negatively impact them. I didn't want it to stress them out. I didn't want them to have to shuffle things around and compromise their workflow, or give them, like, transfer my stress to them, right? Like, that's my job, I believe, as a leader, is to own my own decisions and to protect them, because here's the truth. They would have gotten this episode out. I have seen it time and time again. They offer it. If they can do it, they will. But that's not what I want. Like, that's not the culture that I want. That's not the business that I want. And honestly, I needed to own this decision so that I didn't feel guilty that I was putting anybody else out on the team. So yeah, it was just really important that I communicated that so clearly for them. Now, how did I come to this place? Honestly, I wish I had come to this decision a little bit earlier in the week, maybe even Thursday. But I really thought, okay, I have one more shot on Friday. But how I made this decision was that I had to zoom out. I had to zoom out from what was right in front of me, which was to record this podcast episode. It was a very, external deadline. My team is affecting my team. Like, this was the obvious thing in front of me. But the best thing I could do is zoom out and look at my overall goals and vision of success. I talk about this all the time. When you are clear about what your why is, what drives you, what your vision of success is, and what your goals are, it is so much easier to move through decision making. And my health takes priority over all else. And this is just another example. My health takes priority in the sense of how I make time to take care of myself, to how I pace my weeks and my schedule. Health is the very top of my vision of success. But even though it was technically my health, I was almost fighting it because it was my health in the sense of now I'm sick and I'm like, no, I should just push on, right? Like, I almost have it figured out where I'm like, okay, preemptively, I'm going to create this life that prioritizes health. But then when I got sick, there's guilt and thoughts around this shouldn't be happening and I shouldn't be sick. And so it was harder for me to see the obvious, right? And I'm just being completely honest because I don't want anyone walking away from these episodes thinking, oh my gosh, like, if this is hard to make a decision and fill in the blank, like, I'm doing it wrong. It is not always that easy. We have our own stuff that we're dealing with. Now, what I do, and I think you can do as well, is catch it. Catch where you're like finding yourself doing things that you'd rather not do, observe it, and then zoom out and make a different decision, which is exactly what I did. I needed guilt-free rest. That was my priority. And realigning and ensuring that that was my most productive, that was actually my most productive activity, and not just keeping busy, not just checking something off of the list because I quote unquote should be. And what I mean by that is I was putting in the work. I was putting in the work on Thursday to write the episode, but that episode should not have ever taken me that long to write. So two things were happening. One, I was not being my most productive self because I was drawing out the task that should have taken me maybe an hour and now was taking me several hours because I couldn't think, I couldn't focus, I was uninspired. And then two, I was focusing on the wrong activity as my most productive activity. I was not doing my best work, right? And because I wasn't doing my best work, because I was compromised from not feeling well and trying to push through, I wasn't going to be putting out my best work. And if I'm not going to be putting out my best work, is it really the quality of work that I want to be putting out just to hit a deadline? And the answer is no. So I'm going to be saving that content that I started, and I will finish writing for another future episode and publishing it. But I need to put my eyes on it again when I'm refreshed and back to A game, right? To be doing like a deeper dive episode that I often deliver here on the podcast, because I do have high standards and I want those standards to be maintained. And you know that I'm always looking at coming to you from a place of wanting to provide value. And sometimes value comes in the form of permission. And what I want to give you today is permission. That if you need to prioritize yourself, your health, whether that's physical health, mental health, whatever that looks like, or even prioritizing anything else that matters most to you, your kids, your marriage, celebrating your husband's birthday, that I prioritize. That was a whole day out of the week that I pushed it. I probably could have written this on Tuesday because I was feeling great still. But fill in the blank. I want to give you permission that you can too zoom out and you can prioritize what matters most to you. And you're gonna have to make hard decisions because knowing what your priorities are one thing, but moving into decision based on knowing those priorities is another. And for me, this was a hard decision, not because I think the podcast is more important than focusing on my health or my own well-being or my husband, but because it was a very public decision to be pushing the podcast episode late and knowing that if I had just pushed through, I could have gotten it out. My team would have rallied. Maybe they were stressed. Maybe they were inconvenienced. I knew that I could push through and maybe give you a good episode, but it wasn't going to be that this time. It wasn't going to be that because that is not ultimately in alignment with how I run my business, my vision of success, and how I really want to lead my team and lead my business. So zooming out is the key. Because if I had just stayed zoomed in that moment, all signs point to push through, get the episode out. There is a deadline, do the thing. I want you to understand that the hardest thing that we have to do in our businesses is often the most important thing that we need to do in our businesses, is to be honestly prioritizing where you're going to be putting your time, energy, and attention. And yes, that will mean that there will be consequences to those decisions. Oftentimes, making decisions and properly prioritizing, or rather, not making a decision and not properly prioritizing, is wanting to avoid the consequences of those decisions and prioritization. So decision or indecision is action. And oftentimes we're not making a decision because we're afraid of what those consequences are. Well, what are the unintended consequences? For me, if I had, turned away from making this decision, yes, I would have hit the deadline. But what were the unintentional consequences of maybe I would be sicker longer? Maybe I wouldn't get the rest I wanted. Or needed, rather. That was my body needing that rest to repair and get back on track. There is always going to be a trade-off. And are you willing to choose the thing that matters most to you and not compromise on that? Now, when this was happening last week, I thought it was really interesting that I was feeling all these feelings. I was having all this internal dialogue, and that it wasn't black and white. It wasn't clear, like, I am sick. Therefore, I am not going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm okay with not hitting that deadline. It was not like that. You just heard what that experience was like. But it was really interesting that I was experiencing it just as you are, a human, a business owner, someone that takes pride in their work, maybe takes pride in hitting deadlines. Maybe that's for you too. You're a people pleaser. Whatever your motivations are, there are reasons in which we are not making these like definitive black and white decisions so easily. But I was also, while being in it and feeling all those feelings, I also felt like I was observing and recognizing the situation that I was in. And I was asking myself, well, if a client was in a similar decision, how would I be coaching them through it? And that's what I needed to lift myself out of that moment. And I was like, well, that's clear as day. Like, I know exactly how I would support a client in this. And it would always be reminding them of what actually mattered most to them and reminding them of what their vision of success is or what their goals are, and letting that be the decision maker. Let that be the filter in which that decision is made through. And look, that's important because what if your vision of success is different? Maybe it is absolutely at all costs hit the deadline to do the thing, right? If that's the case, then now you know why you're making that decision and pushing through and, maybe ignoring that you're not feeling your best and you're not putting out your best work. But with coaching, it's always about not giving that exact answer because my answer is different than your answer versus the next person's answer. It's truly understanding that you will have within you your own filters to make your own best decision. And what I needed in that moment to move through that decision was to remind myself to zoom out and ask myself what actually mattered most. And by doing that, I gave myself guilt-free permission to step away. And that guilt-free permission to step away allowed me to have a fabulous weekend because this weekend was all about celebrating my husband and my best friend's birthday on Saturday. Well, both. On Tuesday, my husband, and then on Saturday, I had planned this, dinner and show and going to a speakeasy and just this entire kind of experience that I was so excited about doing with our closest friends. And it took a lot of planning and it took a lot of coordinating schedules. So if you are a fellow adult, you know how hard it is to get a bunch of adults together that have so many other commitments of sporting things and family parties and work schedules and you name it. I always like to say like the sky parted, like literally all things lined up that we were able to do it this Saturday. And I'm just so grateful for that. I guess that's why I'm sharing that. It's like, I'm so grateful that everybody came. But guess what? I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the reason. Like, I planned this and I'm going to be the reason that we can't all get together because I don't feel good. This was also part of the redirection of like, I can push through, but also I know what I have coming up this weekend and what experience I want to have, which is to feel my best, to have the best time. And I did, because I did give myself that guilt-free permission to step away and to rest and to reinvest in myself. And then on Sunday, I had to make that same decision because if you remember, I had told the team, hey, if I get a chance, I am going to go ahead and record this weekend. It'll just be waiting for you so we can get it out as soon as possible on Monday. Well, I felt better on Sunday. I had a little bit of low energy just from, having a nice night out on Saturday night and recovering. But I decided that there was also a cost to me going to the office and recording. And that cost was laundry not getting done, doing things around the house because I hadn't been home the weekend before, preparing for the week, just adult stuff like groceries or meal planning. And for me, it was going to be an either or. I could either reset my household and reset for a wonderful week ahead, or I could guilt myself into going into the office to hit this deadline. And I mean, I don't even know that it was much of a thought, but newsflash, it's Monday, midday, and I am recording this episode. So once you make a decision, it's not one decision. You might need to remake that decision over and over again. And long story short, some decisions are just not really easy to make, but they are worth making so that you're not carrying the weight of indecision, so that you can really prioritize your highest, most important activities, which, as you know, if you've been a longtime listener, the way that I define productivity is when we're investing our best time into our best activities. So best time is the time in which you show up your best, focused, energized, being able to give your best to the work that you're doing. And your best activities are the ones that are going to move you towards your goals, move the needle. And while it may seem obvious as I share this story and example with you that my highest and best activity was slowing down, resting, and letting my body recharge and repair so that I could come back and give my listeners, my clients, and my team and my family the best of me, in that moment, it wasn't that clear. And it may not be that clear for you. But my ask is that you give yourself permission to zoom out, prioritize, and move through what feels like a hard decision, but the right decision. I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast, and I sure hope you have found it to be incredibly valuable. But I need to be straight with you. No change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you're pushing through when you're compromised, ask yourself, is this really my highest and best activity right now? Because sometimes the most strategic thing you can do for your business is to give yourself permission to step away, recharge, and come back ready to give your best work. Your business, your team, your family, and your clients all deserve the best version of you, not the exhausted, compromised version that is just trying to hit a deadline. Now, for me, you heard that I had to take a couple days off and the weekend off. For you, it might be something as little as cutting out early and going to a yoga class to reset, or stepping away from the computer and going for a walk, listening to some music. This lesson that I want to share with you can look really, really different for each of you and in each situation. So be open to what stepping away looks like for you in the situations that you find yourself in. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.